Hi, I'm Mrs. Wilson from the Health and PE Department.
Hi, I'm Anna Denisio.
Hello, I'm Bryce Carpenter.
Hello, my name's Kian Ma.
Hi, I'm Mr. Gorlick.
This is Chapter 4, The Most Dangerous Sport, Wednesday and Thursday, June 27 and 28. Wednesday, Katina Air Base, Okinawa, Japan. There is a soccer team stuck in a cave in Thailand. Be ready. We are being notified that we might head out. Major Charles Hodges, a Citadel Honors graduate with a Boy Scouts can-do attitude, was put on notice by his Director of Operations. Hodges is a commander of the U.S. Air Force 320th Special Tactics Squadron, and they were needed right away. This is the kind of mission Hodges enjoys, a challenge that will call on their training in organizing rescues under difficult circumstances, with the added incentive of the chance to help out, to be of service to young people in danger. Hodges would have to pull together a team of no more than 34 soldiers from his group with the pararescue specialists from the 31st Rescue Squadron. And he had exactly 35 seats available on the packed C-130 plane that would ferry them to Thailand. One of those slots was reserved for native Thai speaker on his team. Having one Thai speaker was a start, though Hodges knew that language was the least of their concerns. For decades, U.S. military efforts have been conducted as part of multinational teams, and there are training sessions for officers in how to work well with peers from different backgrounds. He knew that the differences of culture and outlook might be harder to bridge than matters of language. The Thai government had invited the United States to come help, and the Thais were, as they should be, in charge. But Hodges and his team were there to use their own professional judgment. What would happen if Thai officials and U.S. officers had different visions of the mission? Captain Jessica Tate, a well-spoken Chief Public Affairs Officer for the 353rd Special Operations Group, and Master Sergeant Derek Anderson, who was the I-can-handle-anything demeanor of a catcher on a baseball team, hustled through the morning, got their gear together, and clambered onto the plane. The C-130 carrying the squad taxied along the runway, then suddenly came to a stop. While its engines roared, the plane remained motionless, with 34 soldiers in their seats wondering what was happening. Finally, a commercial airline on its scheduled routine touched down. Its doors opened, steps unfurled, and a man wearing casual shorts and a t-shirt rushed down across the tarmac. Staff Sergeant James Brisbane had been on vacation with his family in the beautiful temple city of Kyoto, but he had bought a ticket to return to the base on the 27th. Brisbane was a member of the 31st Rescue Squadron and had been a cave diver before joining the military. The last seat on C-130 was reserved for him. Now complete, the American crew took off for Thailand, knowing very little about what was ahead of them. They would arrive at 1 in the morning the next day, Thai time, with one interpreter, one cave diver, a team experienced in rescues, an unknown mission, and the entire world watching.
Across the globe in Zimbabwe, one key was contacting the Chinese embassy in Thailand, offering his services and sending a request to members of the Peaceland Foundation, looking for volunteers with professionalism, cave exploration, and diving skills. By 6 in the evening, the British divers reached Bangkok, where they were bundled in a minibus and sped to the cave. Rick Santon is one of those people whose features suggest the most intense focus. John Volentin, in his cave diving pattern, works as an IT specialist, and it's not hard to picture him as a scoutmaster he is, combining a hearty eagerness with a careful, skeptical glaze. Stanton and Volentin came to Thailand with Rob Harper, who would serve as the coordinator of the British team. Stanton and Volentin, along with Chris Jewell and Mason Malison, were perhaps the most skilled, fearless cave divers in the world. If anyone could find a way past the rushing current across the T-junction through the extremely narrow pinch points to wherever the boys might be, it would be this team. After all, Stanton, Volanthen, and Mallison, along with Dutch diver Rien Heuven, set a world record in 2010 when they spent 50 hours penetrating 5.5 miles, 8.8 kilometers, through the Pozo Azul cave in Spain. Martin Farr, himself a cave diver and the author of The Darkness Beckons, one of the best books on the subject, met divers as they began to assault on Pozo Azul. He noted his diary, they were like icebergs. Above the water you see just a minute apart. Below the surface it is unfathomable strength and invincible resolve. Too far, the Pozo Azul dive was dangerous, as significant as the first world record climb, Mount Everest, or trip to the North Pole. One challenge in 2010 was that both Stanton and Mallison were eager to take on the greatest risk. In the end, it was Mallison who reached the farthest point. He attributed to his success to a strong survival instinct, no panic, along with bailout options, which were barely adequate. Calmness, courage, planning, the Dave diving credo. Both Stanton and Volanthen both introduced cave diving as teenagers. Volanthen had explored dry caves as a Boy Scout and found them all more exciting with added challenge of water. Stanton first heard about cave diving from a scout and thought, I'd love to do something like that. A year or so later, when he was 18, his mother asked him to come see a TV show on it. It was about two divers linking up was the longest cave dive in the world. After watching it, I just knew that cave diving was for me. Though he went on to college and enjoys career as a firefighter, from the moment he saw the show, he had found his calling. As Stanton says, in the cave diving he had found a passion that guided his life. From then to now, if you are lucky, he explains, you will find something that identifies you. For him, that is cave diving, which he did not see as a sport or a hobby. It is a physical and mental activity that involves thinking, planning, logistics, challenge to overcome, exploration, and people you meet, friends you create for life.
The passion for cave diving with all its dangers does not mean Stanton, Volanthen, and Mallison are the kind of adventure addicts who take risk for the rush of speeding up the pulse. The very fact that you are entering an unknown and hostile environment in which you need to carry with you even the air that you are to breathe, in which visibility may be minimal and there is a danger of sharp objects and entrapping dead ends at every turn, means you must be very well prepared and clear thinking. Volanthen has said that diving to great depths involves a complete commitment to an increasingly hazardous situation. Hazardous indeed. Cave diving has been called the world's most dangerous sport. For example, between 1960 and 1980, 194 cave divers were killed in Florida alone. A survey of the entire United States shows how dangerous the sport still is, but how it has improved since then. Between 1985 and 2015, 161 divers across the 50 states were killed in caves. The difference is due to the strict guidelines and proper training procedures that have been developed. But the death rate shows how careful you must be. You're in an environment that does not suffer fools gladly, Volanthen has said. What he and Stanton strive for in a dive is clarity and precision, not excitement. Panic and adrenaline are great in certain situations, he explains, but not in cave diving. When Stanton and Volanthen reached the Tame Lung cave, they found complete chaos. The entrance was shoulder to shoulder with reporters taping segments, film crews wrestling their equipment from spot to spot, rescuers and volunteers. There was no one to greet and guide them through, though they did not find Unsworth, but warned that Chamber 3 was overflowing, flooding the passage out. Cameras and microphones followed the divers everywhere, even as they had to push their way through the scrum to enter the cave, commandeering the tanks and ropes they needed as they went. Someone warned them not to try to go farther into the cave, but a Thai seal said the choice was theirs. One challenge would be the cave, another would be the crowd.
The C-130 landed on time at 1 in the morning on the 28th. Mayor Hodges sent most of the rest, and by he and his fellow team leaders headed straight to the cave entrance for the first meeting with the Thai SEALs. Captain Tate did not have a headlamp, so she could not see in front of herself. She could try to stay close enough to those who did. Then she thought of the soccer team, deep in the enveloping darkness. She could not even imagine what they might have been experiencing. Major Hodges surveyed the site and made a few mental notes. High on the cave walls, he saw mud lines, an indication of just how far the water flow could reach. And then, scattered through the caves, he saw shrubs. A shrub is a hollow or a pathway beneath the rocks, which could be filled with water and be any length or depth, from a short muddy crawl to a long, dangerous dive. One reason why British divers happen to be so adept in caves is that the shrubs are frequent features in the caves of their homeland. As they train in their beloved sport, they gain practice at making their way through the dark, confined space filled with sharp rocks and muddy water. While Hodges was looking up in the mudlines, Anderson looked down and worried. When they arrived at the cave at 2 in the morning, the water had been ankle deep. Within an hour, it had reached 2 feet. He thought the cave was undivable. As the day went on, 7 inches of rain poured from the sky. Diver Ben Raymond, a charming and gregarious person with many Thai friends, heard that the British divers had arrived and did not think he was needed. Then Runrik Chang Wen Yun, who had arrived with the Thai singer early on, told him that the Thai SEALs could use support. Raymond agreed and flown his diving school in southern Thailand to the site by Air Asia, along with his 85 pounds of tanks, masks, and wetsuits. He joined the growing throng at the caves. Everyone knew that if any of those boys were still alive, they must be past the T-junction, somewhere above the water. Cave explorers reported that the Pattaya beach and a smaller sandy ledge past that would probably stay dry even as the cave flooded and would probably have enough oxygen to let people breathe. Water dripping down would be naturally filtered as it drained through the stalactites, keeping it clear and safe to drink. The challenge, the necessity, was the cross-junction, but the 2 streams of water met there, making the current prohibitionary strong. Even entering the cave was difficult. Raymond had a strong fight against the current, pulling himself along the rope line with his heavy gear, inching forward and the caverns growing even smaller. As Seton described it, half of the cave system was totally underwater and was like swimming against the current in the canal. This was the beast the divers would have mastered to reach the boys.
Thursday, June 28th. A second day of 7 inches of rain was filling the caves. Just as the international helpers began their work, a new crisis arose. A high-ranking Thai police official arrived at the cave and told them that they would all be in trouble unless they requested and received permission from him to be there. He claimed to be protecting a national park, but in fact he was making himself important and putting a stop to the rescue. The chaos at the cave was no longer the press of crowds and the infiltration of thieves. The rescue was a prize for powerful officials to control. Prayut Chan-o-cha, the unpopular retired general who was the Prime Minister of Thailand, won respect by telling the police official to leave and the rescuers to continue. Even as personal egos and political conflicts dominated the outside of the cave, conditions inside were growing ever more treacherous. Stanton and Valanthan made one attempt to reach the T-junction, but the dirty, turbulent water was too difficult even for them, and they turned back. On their second trip, they reached Chamber 3. Earlier, the Thai SEALs and other workers had managed to enter that chamber to stash reserve gas tanks and food, and to set up a place for the giant water pumps. Long tubes looking like giant brown worms now snaked along the ground carrying water out to the cave mouth. Supposedly, everyone had managed to get out after stocking the caves, but the rescuers came upon 4 frightened water pump workers mentioned in the prologue. The men had been stuck in the chamber for a full day, trapped by flows that had risen while they worked. 2 flooded segments, sumps, each about 20 feet long and filled with cool water, stood between the men and a scramble for safety. Each section was just too long to cross by holding your breath. The men couldn't stay, as the water would only rise farther and flood more sections. They couldn't dive. They could not escape. The divers made an instant decision. They would dive the men out in relays using the tanks and breathing apparatus available in the cave. Each cave diver strapped 2 canisters to his side with regulators to manage the flow of air to himself and his cargo, snatch and grab. Clutching the guide rope in one hand, the diver hugged a worker with the other, gave each a mouthpiece linked to gas, and dove into the water. All the way across, it was an underwater wrestling match as the workers thrashed in the water, yet ultimately held on, keen to get out. One by one, the men made it across, and the British divers learned 2 opposing lessons. The chaos of the rescue effort had left 4 men behind, trapped. The water was now moving so quickly and was so littered with dirt and debris that it was like swimming through dense fog. Not even Stanton and Valanthin could safely navigate it. Trying again was likely to lead to 2 horrible outcomes. Rescuers would be killed, and everyone, the thousands gathered at the cave, would remain there helpless. With every effort blocked by the water, mothers, fathers, classmates, friends, officials, SEALs, volunteers would know that they were all just waiting for an inevitable outcome. The 2 divers considered leaving, going home rather than remaining for that awful vigil. Instead, they chose to stay. For should conditions change, there was a flicker of hope. In saving the 4 water pump workers, they learned that even in such a dangerous cave with people who had no diving experience, a rescue might be possible.